During our family reunion, my dad announced loudly, "She's a freeloading failure who couldn't even finish med school." I laughed it off. "Is that what you think?" 8 months later, my startup got acquired for $3.2 million, and I sent him a screenshot of the wire transfer with the subject line, "Not bad for a failure." I 32 female was raised in what people might call a prestige-driven household. Think holidays with monogrammed napkins, arguments that sound like corporate evaluations, and an underlying theme of success equals love. We lived in Chestnut Hill, Philadelphia. Picture the kind of neighborhood with old stone homes, labradoodles, and people who still think being in the Harvard Club means something. That was the setting of my childhood. My dad, Harold, is a well-known cardiologist. My mom, Bernice, is a homemaker, but not the sweet cookie-baking kind. She's the type who once told me that being liked was a woman's most important currency. My older brother Marcus, 35 male, is a corporate lawyer in Boston with a face like a stock photo and a wife who wears pearl earrings to yoga. My younger sister Sienna, 29 female, is married to a dentist, has 2 toddlers, and lives in Atlanta in a gated community called Willow Pines. And then there's me. I was the outlier, the misfit, the black sheep, if you will. I didn't plan to be. I actually started off on their path. I went to med school like my father always pushed for. Drexel University College of Medicine. I got in, did well, and even managed to convince myself I wanted it. But deep down, I didn't. And more than that, I couldn't. I was good at memorizing and grinding and staying up for 72 hours straight, but I wasn't built for relentlessness. I wasn't emotionally wired to watch people die and detach. Somewhere in my second year, the cracks started showing. I remember the moment it all unraveled. I had just left the ER after a double shift. My attending had barked at me for missing a vein on a 4-year-old. It was almost 2 a.m. I went home, still in my scrubs, sat in the shower, fully clothed, and stayed there for almost 2 hours. Not crying, not thinking. Just gone. My roommate called my name through the door. I didn't answer. I don't remember much of the days that followed, but I dropped out 2 weeks later. My dad didn't speak to me for 2 months. My mom sent me a package with a note. "Maybe law school is a better fit. Love, Mom." Inside were 2 things, an LSAT prep book and a bottle of retinol cream. I moved into a tiny 3rd-floor walk-up in Fishtown. The building smelled like old radiator heat and burnt toast. I lived above a bookstore and across from a bodega that sold soft pretzels for 50 cents. It was the first time in my life that no one expected anything from me. I started freelancing, medical copywriting, content for health startups, anything that paid. It was humiliating at first, going from dissecting cadavers to writing blog posts about vitamin C serums. But weirdly, I felt free for the first time. My family barely acknowledged me. I stopped getting invites to holidays. Marcus stopped liking my posts on Instagram. Sienna called once every 3 months to make small talk and tell me how worried Mom was. I wasn't even angry. I just stopped trying. And then, last summer, I got a call from my uncle Samuel. Samuel is my dad's younger brother. He's the opposite of my father in every way, laid back, outdoorsy, and emotionally intelligent. He called and said, "Hey kiddo, family reunions next month. Are you coming?" I laughed. "I haven't been to one of those in, 6 years?" "I know, but you should. Enough exile." I hesitated. He added, "Bring your dog. We're at the lake house in Lake Placid. No judgment zone, at least from me." And I don't know what got into me, but I said yes. I didn't tell anyone else. I showed up that Friday afternoon with my dog, Milo, a half-blind, grumpy rescue with a taste for string cheese, and my canvas duffel bag. The reunion was already in full swing when I walked through the backyard. Lawn games, catered barbecue, string lights, that kind of thing. The moment I stepped onto the grass, every head turned. Sienna dropped her cocktail. Marcus looked like he swallowed his tongue. My mother clutched her pearls, literally. My father, he didn't even flinch. He just looked at me like I was an unexpected guest at a board meeting. No one said, "Welcome back." Dinner that night was a blur of awkward silences and backhanded compliments. "You look healthy," my mom said, which, if you've ever grown up in a family like mine, you know is code for you've gained weight. Marcus asked what I did these days with the same tone someone might use when asking about a rash. I told them I was working on a startup in the health tech space. My dad rolled his eyes. "Freelance nonsense," he muttered. That should have been my cue to leave, but I stayed. And then the moment happened, the reason I'm here writing this. Toward the end of the meal, my father stood up with his wine glass and said loudly, like he was on stage, "To family," he began, "to those who made something of themselves, who have upheld the Whitmore legacy, and to those who are still, well, figuring it out." I knew it was coming. He turned directly to me, "Even if that means freeloading and quitting med school because it got a little tough." Laughter, not from everyone, but enough. Sienna looked mortified. Marcus smirked. I took a sip of my drink and said, "Is that what you think?" He raised his glass again. "Just calling it like I see it." I nodded. "Good to know." I left the next morning before anyone was awake. I packed up Milo and drove 6 hours in silence, alternating between blind rage and complete numbness. By the time I got back to Philly, something inside me had shifted. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving anything to him. It was just time. I had been working on a platform idea for nearly a year with a woman I met at a tech meetup. Tara, former nurse, now developer. We'd been building a tool to automate medical documentation and admin tasks for small practices. We had a prototype, some pilot users, but no real traction. After the reunion, I doubled down. I pitched. I built a proper deck. I cold-emailed investors. I started networking like a woman possessed. I worked 14-hour days from my kitchen table and didn't stop to think about how exhausted I was. I was just moving. By September, we secured $150K in angel funding. In December, we signed on our first paying clinics. By February, we got approached by a large Minneapolis-based health tech company. And in April, exactly 8 months after that backyard humiliation, we closed an acquisition deal for $3.2 million. I remember the moment the wire transfer came through. I sat in the same coffee shop I'd worked in for 3 years. I stared at the numbers, then screenshotted it. No caption, no explanation, just the screenshot and an email to my father. Subject line: "Not bad for a failure." He opened the email within 2 hours. I had red receipts turned on, which I never do, but for this I made an exception. He opened it again the next morning, and again the next evening. He didn't reply. I didn't expect him to, honestly. I wasn't hoping for an apology. What would that even look like coming from a man like my father? "Sorry I belittled your entire life because it didn't look like mine." That wasn't his language. He didn't operate in regrets, only results. But what I did notice was a shift, quiet but unmistakable. 2 weeks later, my mother called. She never calls me unless someone is dead or dying. "Your father wants to talk," she said, clipped and uneasy. I waited. There was some shuffling on the other end, a clearing of a throat. Then his voice, "Layla." I didn't answer, just wait. "I saw your email." "Yeah," I said. "I didn't know you were building something like that." I almost laughed. "You didn't ask." Silence. Then, "Are you happy?" I was caught off guard. I'd expected defensiveness, not whatever this was. "I'm proud of the work I'm doing," I said. "And I'm not constantly anxious or hollow inside, which is more than I can say about how I felt in med school." He let out a slow breath. "You always had a stubborn streak. I didn't think it would take you anywhere." I raised my eyebrows, even though he couldn't see me. "Thanks. I mean," he backpedaled, "I didn't understand it. I still don't. But clearly, you made something of yourself." It wasn't praise. It was more like a formal acknowledgement, like a CEO congratulating a junior employee for an above-average quarter. But from him, it was as good as it gets. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I suppose I owe you an apology." It landed in my ears like a foreign language. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. "I'm not looking for that," I said honestly. "You don't have to say things you don't mean. I mean it." "Okay, maybe we could get dinner," I sighed. "I'll think about it." That was the end of the call, no mushy reconciliation, no tears. Just an opening, barely cracked, but open nonetheless. Since then, things have changed, not drastically, but subtly. My mom now tells people I run a company, but conveniently leaves out that it was sold. Sienna and I have grown closer. She told me once, after a few too many glasses of white wine during a video call, that she envied me. Not the money, but the freedom. "You figured out how to exist outside of them," she said. "I still can't breathe unless Mom approves of what I'm wearing." Marcus still doesn't say much. He never acknowledged the startup or the acquisition. At Christmas, He gave me a candle and a gift card to Pottery Barn like I was a secret Santa pick. But you know what? That's fine, because I no longer need their acknowledgement to know I did something real. I moved to Santa Fe for a while, rented a small adobe house near Canyon Road. It was quiet, and the light in the mornings was unlike anything I'd ever seen in Philly. I took long walks, met a few artists, and for the first time in over a decade, I let myself feel good without guilt. One afternoon, while I was sitting on the patio with Milo, my mom called again. She wanted to know if I was still working. Still. I told her I was helping a friend build something new. That was technically true. Tara and I had started thinking about a new venture, one with even more ambitious reach. "You never stop, do you?" she said, her tone neutral but tinged with something else. Maybe pride, maybe surprise, maybe both. "I stopped once," I replied. "That's why I had to start again." She was quiet for a moment. "Your father asked me if I thought you'd move back to the East Coast." I laughed. "Is that his way of asking if I'd come visit?" "I think so." I said I'd think about it. And I meant that too. I wasn't sure if I could walk into that old house again and not feel 17 all over again, confused, desperate for approval, and so small. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Still, the old ghosts linger. Like the time I saw a woman in scrubs at the grocery store and my stomach dropped. Or the nights I wake up from dreams where I'm back in med school, covered in blood, holding a chart I don't understand. Trauma doesn't vanish with success. It just gets buried under layers of work and small victories. Yet, something in me has softened. I no longer feel the need to prove anything. The screenshot I sent my father wasn't a mic drop. It was a sigh of relief. It was me saying I survived. I made it out. I'm okay now. Sometimes that's enough. A few months after that call with my mother, I found myself back on the East Coast, not in Philadelphia, but in New York City. Tara and I had been invited to speak on a panel about female founders in tech, and I figured while I was already flying across the country, I might as well drop down to Philly for a weekend. I hadn't been back to my parents' house in almost 7 years. Not since the infamous career intervention dinner where my dad said my lack of vision was a liability to the family name. At the time, I went back to my apartment and cried until I couldn't breathe. This time, I walked through their front door like I owned the place. My mother opened it. Her hair was styled to perfection, as always. Her smile was polite, a little stiff, but not unkind. Behind her, the house looked exactly the same: heavy furniture, perfectly fluffed throw pillows, expensive wallpaper that hasn't aged well. "You look successful," she said, stepping aside. "I am," I replied, hanging up my coat. "It's weird, right?" She actually smiled at that. "Your father's in his study." Of course he was. The man basically lived in that leather-clad cave, surrounded by medical journals and certificates that were framed like museum pieces. I didn't go in immediately. I walked through the house first. Took it all in. The hallway still had my brother's and sister's graduation portraits. Mine had never made it there, probably buried in a drawer somewhere. When I finally knocked on the study door, I heard his gruff "Come in." He looked up from his desk, glasses low on his nose, still in a pressed button-down and slacks, even though it was Saturday. "Layla, hi, Dad." We just stared at each other for a moment, then he leaned back and nodded. "Heard you're giving some sort of talk in the city." I smiled. "Yep, tech panel, women founders. Apparently, I'm a case study in unconventional success." His lips twitched just slightly. "You always were unconventional. Guess it worked out for me. I saw an article in Forbes." "You read Forbes? I like to know what the younger generation is up to," he said with a weak smirk. We sat in silence for a minute. "I wanted to talk to you about something," I said, pulling out a file from my bag and placing it on his desk. He raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "It's a proposal. Tara and I are starting something new. Bigger, more ambitious. We're bringing in a few strategic investors. I saved one small seat at the table, just one." His brow furrowed. "You're offering me an investment opportunity." I met his eyes. "You always said I didn't know what I was doing, that I wasn't cut out for this world. But I built something, I sold it, and now I'm doing it again. If you want to be a part of it, not because I'm your daughter, but because you finally see what I'm capable of, this is your chance." He stared at the folder. Didn't touch it, then looked back at me. "You're serious." "Dead serious. And if I say no," I shrugged, "then you miss out again." He didn't speak for a long time. I let the silence hang there. I wasn't begging. I wasn't there to prove anything. I had already won. Finally, he picked up the folder and opened it. "I'll look it over," I stood. "Take your time, but not too much. These rounds close fast." And with that, I walked out of his study. That evening, over dinner, my mother asked me to show her the photos from the Forbes shoot. My sister called during dessert and said she heard about the panel and freaked out a little when she saw my face on LinkedIn. Marcus texted a thumbs-up emoji. And the next morning, just before I left, my father handed me the folder back signed. He didn't say anything grand, just, "I trust your judgment." For the first time in my life, I believed him. Revenge, I learned, doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to come in the form of shouting matches or cutting people out forever. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is quiet. It's showing up at the table with receipts, calm eyes, and the kind of confidence no one can deny. It's living well, thriving even, and letting the people who doubted you watch.